Good evening, Holliston. Welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, November 16th, 2020. Earlier this evening at approximately 6 p.m., our board awarded 3 individuals their humanitarian awards. This is the second year in a row the board has engaged with recognizing individuals who work or live in Holliston, who provide some unsung care, compassion, and kindness towards our citizens. It was a wonderful gathering, brief and small, but yet poignant enough that I think during this month of Thanksgiving, everybody should know there's a lot of wonderful things going on in Holliston every day, and these 3 folks were recognized for their contributions to that. So thank you to Debbie Dupuy, John Drohan, and Keely Krantz. The individuals were very appreciative and humble, as you would expect. This evening, we'll jump into our agenda with a coronavirus community update from our police chief, and big announcement. Happy birthday, Mike Cassidy. Come on down.
29?
An anniversary of my 29th, yes. Thank you very much.
I hope it's a happy birthday for you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
We sing, but that's not happening.
I'm sure that would violate some FCC regulations or something. So,
we have to pay for it.
We don't want to do that. So currently we have 176 coronavirus cases in Holliston, with 140 having recovered and 2 COVID-related fatalities. That brings us up to 34 active cases. That's up from 29 the last Monday evening. Included in that list of 34 active cases, 10 are well in excess of more than 2 weeks old, including one that dates all the way back to October the 13th. So I've asked our health director if he could get an update from our nursing consultant on the status of those older cases to see if we might be able to roll some of those off of our active and to our recovered list. And I am waiting to hear back still. We currently remain in the yellow, or the moderate risk designation from the Department of Public Health under the latest metrics that they have. And based on the number of cases, new cases, in the 14-day period ending November 14th, I expect that we will remain in the yellow category on Thursday when DPH issues their weekly report once again. I was on a conference call last week with an expert in the public health field, and his sage advice was that we're still probably a year away from herd immunity, and that even if the vaccine becomes available in the early part of 2021, masks and other mitigation measures will continue to be a reality for probably at least another year at this point. So that's it in terms of the big overview. One of the things that you had asked me about last week was how we can up our messaging. And so I have prepared for you all thank you for passing that to him. Thank you. Prepared a sort of a plan for our blitz to the community in the coming couple of weeks. I was granted admin publishing rights to the town's Facebook page earlier today, which will allow me to push out messaging related to COVID and mitigation steps. And then if you look on the back of what I handed you, this is just an example of a couple of the different types of graphics that we can be pushing out. One is from the CDC, the one in the middle is from the state, and then the bottom is an example of some local graphics that I had produced earlier on in the pandemic. So it's my expectation that we'll be doing a blend, depending on what the messaging is, as to whether we're using something from the federal government, the state, or whether we're doing something that really is tugging at the heartstrings of our local connection here. But obviously, as we are going into a couple different holiday seasons in the next couple weeks, we want to remind people of the need for them to sacrifice so that we can continue to keep the school in session as long as possible, and so that we can stop the spread of disease in our community. And so that means leaving seats at the dinner table empty so that we can keep the seats in the classrooms full, or at capacity. That should So one of the things we talked about last week, with regards to messaging was, whether or not variable message signboards would be something that we might want to add to the mix, and I had indicated that, at times, the DPW has been gracious enough to let the, Board of Health use their variable message signboards, but, sometimes, like when we've got a major detour going on Washington Street by the Sherburne Town Line, those message boards need to be redeployed elsewhere and aren't available for public health messaging. So there are a couple options that we have with variable message signboards. Those range from, we can rent a unit for $900 a week, we can rent a unit for a month for $1,200, or we could buy outright for $16,000 a unit. So we just need to figure out what makes sense for us at this point in terms of our deployment strategy. Obviously, a short-term rental of a month or two would definitely be a reasonable expense. If we were thinking that we were going to use it for longer, then we'd want to do a cost-benefit analysis with regards to, do we wish to make a purchase? But if we wish to make a purchase, then the question is, when this is all over, where are those variable message signboards going to reside? Who's going to move them around? Who's going to maintain them? Because the Board of Health does not have a fleet of vehicles available with which they can tow them or deploy them. They don't have the facilities to be able to store them right now. So I would pause here and take some feedback from the board.
We'll get into that. You want to talk about the overall COVID messaging issue?
That
as well?
Yeah, just that we need to continue to encourage people to not go outside of their household whenever possible, to, whether it's for Thanksgiving, just celebrate it with the people who live in your household. Don't be bringing in your family from out of town, out of state, and limiting your contact with people. Obviously, we want you to continue to patronize businesses as a safe manner that you can, but don't jeopardize the health and safety of your family or of anyone else in our community by spending a lot of time and being up close and personal. So things like distancing, masks, hand washing, stop the spread, and answering the phone when someone calls for contact tracing are all part of the messaging that we're going to continue to hammer home.
Any questions on that, Mr. Sparrow?
No, I think this is a great program, and I look forward to checking it out on the social media.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struck by this last message here. I think you all know that I work at Milford Regional Medical Center, and I heard some truly alarming news this weekend from North Dakota in the governor's allowance for healthcare providers who are positive with COVID but asymptomatic,
Yes.
being able to work in order for the North Dakota hospitals to staff and provide the care needed for residents of North Dakota. I mean, that sends a chill down the spine of anybody who is a healthcare provider. Here in Massachusetts, we did not have to take that step back in March, April, May. It was sort of floated about. It is terrifying. In order to work alongside somebody who's positive but asymptomatic, you have to have 100% compliance with their safety standards in order to not be exposed or risk your own health. These are 8, 10, 12-hour shifts that healthcare providers are working in hospitals in very close quarters and very demanding situations. It's incredibly hard to have 100% compliance. That sent a chill down my spine when North Dakota had to consider that step. So this PSA, we come to work for you, please stay home, for us to help spread the stop the spread of COVID-19 really resonates with me personally and the people I work with. So it's quite serious.
It is. Fortunately, we have not been in a situation where we've had to sideline any of our responders due to an exposure on the job here.
Mm-hmm.
I do have members of my department who work for other agencies or organizations, and sometimes they've had to take a pause from their activities with us because of exposure elsewhere. But fortunately, our department has not had to sideline anyone because of anything that we have responded to here in town.
Yeah, it's
But that was just an exemplar of some messaging that I did back in the spring when we truly were shut down more. Obviously, I'll try to find the balance between urging compliance without being too heavy-handed again, I'm asking them, leave that chair at the table empty on Thanksgiving, so that we can have those chairs at the school
Right.
still occupied with students. And, you know, I can do a custom graphic that, you know,
Yeah,
that gives that
I
message.
think that'll be good. And let's be clear, we are also not in the same position that North Dakota is in.
No.
In large part to the strong measures we've taken all along.
Right.
But it's still a significant thing for everybody to be considerate of.
Sure.
Well said. Just a couple things, Chief, on the COVID messaging. Great job putting this together, a nice matrix. As I observed, the method is, various, Facebook, Twitter, Blackboard Connect, possibly electronic messaging boards. If it's going to be posted, the information, where will it reside? Is it on the town website? Is it the Facebook message or the Twitter message directs you to go? Is that where this content is?
Yeah, so there are a couple different ways we can do it. It can be a standalone message, like we can just put something out on the town's Facebook page, or another method that is often used is use the social media as a hook to drive them somewhere else. And that's often like what you see in the middle, on the backside. The messaging from the state is then driving you to learn more by going to the state page. So it depends on the message. If it's something that's succinct and self-contained, it can just stand alone. But if it's something that's longer, like, hey, we really need you to go and look at these metrics and what's going on in our community, look at our community spread, you know, that would be directing them back to our website.
So these social messaging pushes will go out to known users, whether it's an email or a cell phone that's in our bank. But that's not everybody in town that works or resides. And that's where the messaging boards might come in.
And also the power of social media is that people retweet or people share, and so then you get a larger distribution because although they may not be signed up for our feed, when somebody else shares it or likes it, it then can pop up on somebody else's feed.
Right.
But yes, absolutely, the variable message signboards would be a supplement to the other messaging platforms. Because again, it would require someone to drive by wherever the signboard was deployed to see that specific message.
What's your recommendation on the electronic messaging board?
My recommendation at this point would be that we would do a couple month rentals, because we can see how effective they are. And then if before December 30th, we decide that we've got a use case that would warrant us making a purchase, then we would have data to be able to prove its efficacy. But I'm hesitant to just jump right in now and do a purchase of a $16,000 piece of equipment that I don't know where it's going to be housed, who's going to deploy it, who's going to maintain it, who's going to keep it programmed. Because if it's truly for public health purposes, we can't just say the DPW will store it, the DPW will program it, because in order for us to use the CARES funds, it has to be used for public health messaging.
Understood. How big are these units? Are they the same size as the ones that DPW has?
Yes.
Same trailered,
Yes.
roughly 8 by 10? Okay.
Three line, yeah.
Would it be appropriate to look at some kind of a structure to put them in, like a shed? If that is an end game, if we do end up going with the purchasing option?
Sure. One of the challenges we ran into earlier in the spring, summer, when we needed to pull the public health trailer that is co-owned by the fire department and the Board of Health that had been stored at our South Street substation, was in order for the health department to access it, they wanted it on flat ground. We had recommended it being towed here so that they could use it, but they wanted it on flat ground, so right now it's stationed next to our East Holliston Fire Station, because that was a flat piece of ground that we had control over. One of the challenges out back is, obviously, our parking is on an angle, so if we were to do a structure, again, we'd need to figure out at what of our town properties would we have the capability of doing a hut or something.
Yeah, 1750 goes in place too. Okay, well, I think that's sensible. We can move forward with a rental and then examine whether or not it's a good thing to invest in for the need. The last question I had is regarding the messaging topics that you listed here.
Yes.
Which ones would you call are targeting students, the student population, or the age groups that we see the largest group increase in positivity for?
Social distancing, mask, hand washing, stop the spread, COVID stops with me.
Nothing targeting a student.
Well, but again, the way you tailor the graphic, can target a particular audience and either push for them or push for their parents who may have more control over them and their activities. Especially as we think of having, college students coming home and being home possibly for 6 or 8 weeks or longer.
What is our positivity rate right now?
2.42. No, we went down, last Thursday. We went down from 2.72 to 2.42. Which, is largely, even though our number of, cases, locally seemed to have gone up a little, part of that was there was more testing. So because there was more testing, even with a few more cases, that brings our positivity rate down slightly than it had been.
Got it.
So we want to continue to urge people to get tested.
Are there any questions, from the Zoom participants for coronavirus, community updates? Hearing none, we'll move on to the CARES Act. So Mike, you'll come forward next week with some numbers for the, messaging board round.
Yes,
Okay, great.
absolutely.
Moving on to the CARES Act programmatic update.
I do have one request for funding that comes to us from facilities. This would be a supplement to the $4,000 that you voted on August 31st, which was a 25-75 CARES FEMA split for social distancing measures, which includes minor modifications to municipal buildings. That was for the town hall windows. The facilities manager, as that work is being done, they have discovered that there were some things that were hidden from view when they obtained the quote, that they had no idea of, no way of knowing that, certain things were not going to be able to be reused, so a $605, change order is requested.
Any questions on that then?
No. It's pretty straightforward.
No, none.
All right, thank you. If you can give me that amount one more time.
$605.
Steven?
Nice to be able to open my window, by the way. And that window and all the windows on the store.
Without it serving as a guillotine,
Yes, I did almost lose a finger once.
early on.
I'll entertain a motion to approve $605 for the purposes identified by the chief.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries, Mike.
That is it for this evening.
Thanks so much. We appreciate it. Happy birthday. Thank you. A piece of cake on me.
I appreciate that.
Warrant, Mrs. Earl.
All right. We have one warrant. We have one, I will make a motion to approve the warrant in the amount of $1,270,012.26. Of that, $129,554.61 is town payroll.
Yeah, I'll second that.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Public comments. Probably seen that?
No, I don't have anything this evening.
You're good? Okay, we'll vote.
Just that, the Celebrate Holliston Board of Directors chose their, winners for the Celebrate Holliston Heroes, and this year, we did not get to celebrate them on the field day because of the pandemic. They will celebrate them next year after the announcement this year. So, the award winners for Celebrate Holliston Heroes are Megan Alexis. Congratulations, Megan. The Holiday Dreams and Anthony's on the Green, the Holliston Food Pantry, the Holliston Cable Access Television Channel, and the Holliston Lions Club. So, congratulations to the winners again of the Celebrate Holliston Heroes.
Thank you. I was going to make the same point of emphasis. In addition to our humanitarian awards, these folks are all deserving of our recognition and our thanks for the goodness that they do and the way in which they enrich our lives. So thank you very much, and thanks for the Celebrate Holliston Committee folks for being creative with the way they took care of those awards this year. Let us move on quickly now to comments from our town administrator, Travis.
Okay, a couple things, Chief Cassidy.
Let me just pause for a moment and make sure. Anybody on Zoom have a public comment? Hi, Ed, how are you tonight? Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to public comment here. I have a small ask, which has turned into a very long saga, and I'm hoping that maybe the board can help me with. as you know, I've been working with the Friends of Holliston Trails for a lot of years, and years before this board was put here, there was a request and a need that we really felt there was a need for a trash receptacle at Blair Square to be able to handle a lot of the trash that is at the most traveled part of the trail. And it is something that that I know the Blair Square Committee was incorporating into their work that they're doing. And when we were negotiating with our trash contract in the past, it was a lot of discussions then about trying to add that to the entire picture of how to assist that issue with that part of town. And obviously, as Friends of Holliston Trails, we've added the pet stations down there. We've had a lot of great volunteerism to be able to take care of those pet stations with Jimmy Reed from R&R Landscaping, carrying that load for years upon years with us. But we really knew that that was a temporary fix. It was meant to measure. It was meant to support financially to be able to take care of those stations. But there's really a real need to get a receptacle down there that we can have the town take care of by removing that trash. Not meant to be the pet waste. We want to still have the pet waste stations, but the pet waste stations are now containing a lot of trash, and we just can't handle, the volunteers just cannot handle it. So we're at the point, and this is the push and shove that we're at this point, and that's why I wanted to bring it to your attention. It doesn't look like the Blair Square Committee is going to be at a point anytime soon to be able to handle that and incorporate that. And there's been some additional requests, I think, from DPW Highway to add more signage onto the existing pet stations to ensure that the pets waste goes into those stations. Whichever way it goes, you know, we need something down there. And Friends of Holliston Trails has funding to be able to pay for the receptacle. We're even willing to pay for something that's more robust, like the big belly stations that you might have seen, which are solar powered and compacting and even Wi-Fi so that they notify when they're full. And obviously that's something that can be moved around once Blair Square Committee decides where they might be able to go. So I guess what I'm asking of the board is to figure out a solution. We're really going to have to remove the pet stations at Blair Square if we don't have some change happen with the receptacle, just because we can't use volunteerism to do that any longer.
Thank you. Ed, any questions on that?
No, not right now.
Yeah, just, no, I certainly have heard from the Holliston Trail Committee, as well as actually a high school group that was looking for some answers, some students who were looking to see a solution in place. And Travis Ahern and I have talked about it. And as unfortunate as this is, and I'm not offering it up as an answer, the complexity of the issue seems to be related to who clears the trash receptacles on a regular basis, and then how do you keep pet waste out of those trash receptacles? Is that kind of where this sits in terms of what makes this a difficult decision?
Yeah, so I think as far as just trying to research it and where it was before the Harvey's contract to the Harvey's predecessor, the issue has been the mixing of dog waste with other waste in the past, and I think if we're able to accomplish what Mr. Daniels is suggesting here, and has been suggested by another group as well, which is having a consistent presence of a trash can in the Blair Square area rather than rolling them out on an event basis, which has kind of been what we've been doing to mitigate some of the issues, then we would certainly need to make sure that we were having the right use of each run, right? So the pet station, as Mr. Daniels referred to them, is for specifically the pet waste, and then this trash would obviously, we would not want mixing of the two, and that was absolutely an issue for Harvey's predecessor. So based on another suggestion, which is very similar to Mr. Daniel's suggestion, I've already been sort of in contact with them, and hopefully I can bring something back to you in the future on a solution for that. It has been problematic in the past, though. This is not a new issue, obviously, as Mr. Daniels referenced. It was an issue for Harvey's predecessor, and hopefully we can work with Harvey's to come up with something that works for the group, for everybody in Blair Square.
So for the path forward, you see possibly having Harvey service or a trash receptacle in the Blair Square area and keep the dog waste receptacles? Is that sort of what you envision?
Well, we would need to make sure that dog waste is not going into our receptacle that was being
No,
picked up.
we are more than happy to continue the dog waste pickup. Obviously, the last time a receptacle was tried, we didn't have the dog waste stations down there. So what we were trying to do was to show good faith that we could take care of the problem that we had to address, and then after that be able to get the assistance with the trash itself. And I think it's been a 10-year project to vocalize the issues and to try to get something allowed that would work with the pickup of that trash. And we're willing to continue doing that on a volunteer basis. We're just not able to do it with the trash. It's just too busy down there. Too many people are using the trails, especially during the summertime. And it's just not something that we can sustain.
So I think, with that, right, one of the things that was going into what I'd be bringing to you in the future is going to be the consideration of cost that is not currently in that Harvey's contract, that this would be handled, whether it be the DPW picking it up or Harvey's. There's going to be a cost associated with it, so that would be part of it. Obviously, what Mr. Daniels just brought forward was not in the other group that had brought this to my attention. So I'll enter that into the equation of potentially buying a receptacle like the one he described, and we can go from there. And I'll hopefully bring something to you soon. But this has certainly been an issue in the past. And
Who handles the waste at the parks?
so the DPW right now, and especially prior to Harvey's, what the balance that they found was if they're aware of an event happening in Blair Square, they'll roll them out and then they'll take them away. Because if they leave them out for too long, they end up getting piled up. The dog waste has been an issue in the past for Harvey's predecessor, then picking it up because it gets mixed in together. And so if we can come up with a consistent basis where we're making sure that they stay separated, that's probably the best case scenario. But it hasn't been solved to date because of those issues.
So I think, Ed, the best we can do at this point is to say we're going to keep looking at it. We recognize the problem you stated is something that's got to be confronted one way or another. If you'd allow us some time to look into it, talk to our waste hauler, possibly DPW, to come up with a solution. In the meantime, if you or members of the Blair Square Committee have any feedback on what other communities do for this type of challenge, please share that with the town administrator's office.
Sure.
Anything else on that matter? All right, now we will move to the comments from the town administrator. Travis.
Okay. So as the chief mentioned briefly in the beginning, we have a detour on Route 16 that went into place this morning. If you are coming 16 west out of Sherburne into Holliston, you will get detoured at Western Ave, and leaving Holliston, you'll be detoured at Whitney Street. And so that is going to be at least today and tomorrow, although several days is a potential to go into Wednesday. So I will keep you updated, but please follow along with that. And we apologize for the inconvenience, but that is an important project to get done. Two other things related to economic development. The Economic Development Fund that was previously approved at a town meeting, and then this board approved some language to be altered at the request of Rep. Dykema's office when there was an issue with it from House Counsel, has now advanced, and it has a bill number H5092. Mr. Melly from Rep. Dykema's office updated us today, and that should be moving forward. So that's very exciting. That will give us another tool for the Economic Development Committee to use. Generally speaking, it will be for taking private funding put into that to address any blighted properties is the general backbone of it, but Obviously, an economic development fund is something that we haven't had in town before, and so hopefully that group can use that as a tool to its advantage. Another economic development committee item was that they did take a vote that I had brought to you previously on EDA status for the town, specific to a couple of census tracts in which town-owned property or properties of interest to the town sit in, and they did vote in favor of the EDA status. So I'll bring that back to you next week. We can go through it, have it as a full discussion, and then at that time I would be looking for the select board to support it or make a decision. So I'll bring all that back to you next week. But the EDA status would be a conversation we'd be having that would support development of 9 Green Street, either public or private, help public or private movement on Axton Cross, and then also at this moment it's of interest of a private company who is looking to put solar across from our solar project on Marshall. So that will be on your agenda next week. One last thing is that a grant was received by the Council on Aging, and so I talked to Linda Marshall about just updating you that the Board of Trustees of the Metro West Health Foundation approved a grant to the Holliston COA of $16,650 for utilizing technology to engage seniors project. And so this is going to help. Obviously, the seniors have been isolated through COVID-19, help them begin to use things like iPad, FaceTime, follow along on Zoom and those types of things. So that's very exciting. Good job to, obviously, Linda Marshall and the COA on that. And that is all I have for the moment.
Linda, I see you're on our Zoom call this evening. Did you want to add anything to Travis's report on your grant award?
Sure. So we sought the award so that we could engage more people in some of our programs. What we found was our younger seniors and those who had access to technology were readily engaged with us when we went remote and taking our classes. But those who did not either have access or an understanding of technology, it's been much harder to stay engaged with those folks. So we're also hiring a technology assistant as part of this grant who can both set up these tablets and work one-on-one, but can also work with seniors who may already have their own electronic devices, be it a smartphone, some type of a tablet, and help them just to learn how to sign up and use Zoom, for example, or any other social aspects that can help them stay engaged, not just with the community and us, but also with their families. So we're really excited that we were awarded this grant.
That's great news. Thank you for that update, Linda. Good question.
Linda, does this grant allow you to purchase equipment?
Yes, we're purchasing 50 up to 50 tablets with screensavers, cases, the technology assistant, and for the lowest income, we can also purchase Wi-Fi service for 10 months. If they meet the low income eligibility guidelines, they're eligible for $89.95 a month to have internet service. So we're authorized to pay that for the year 2 for up to 25 participants.
Do you see demand outpacing what the grant allows, or do you think it's matched well?
We hope it's matched well. It's hard because even talking with other senior centers, we're all new to doing this, but there's been a lot of interest, and there's been several other towns that have received grants. We're hoping that we can help alleviate people's discomfort about trying technology by having somebody that can offer that one-on-one support. And that's a bit unique. So most of the other towns did not have that as part of their grant.
Okay, thank you.
It looks like you have some kind of a gathering a week from today for the new grantees. Be familiar with that.
We have a huge gathering a week from today, remote, by car. We currently have about 150 seniors signed up to receive a Thanksgiving meal next Monday. We'll be delivering probably 50 to 60 of those meals. The rest will drive by to pick up their meal. It's the largest.
I was going to point out, do you have enough volunteers to deliver those meals, Linda, or could you use more?
I think we're good. I'm not in today, tomorrow. I just moved this weekend. But this will be the largest meal in any format that we have ever provided at the senior center. By about 40 to 50 meals.
Great, great job. All right, Linda,
Thank
anything
you.
else to add?
I think that's it.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
You're welcome,
Any
my
other questions
pleasure.
for the town administrator from our friends on the Zoom call? Hearing none, we will move on to the discussion and vote to reduce the town meeting quorum, which is scheduled for December 5th, 2020. Travis, you want to introduce the issue, including the legal posting that we have produced, and what the options are?
Sure. So, we have followed the guidelines, and I would bring the chief back up as well, as he's been headlining a lot of these efforts. But in order for you to discuss and potentially vote on reducing the quorum of town meeting, it needed to be a legal ad posted 7 days before this meeting, which it was, the Metro West Daily News as well as the Holliston Reporter. Also, the conversation should be had to loop in the moderator, which was done by Chief Cassidy, to make sure that Bill Mayer is in the loop and in support of reducing the quorum if that's the will of the board. And so at this point, everything has been essentially put in place for you to make a decision if you'd like to reduce it below 100. There was some discussion online over the past week after the legal post, as it is written that it can go down to 10% of your quorum, and 10% of our quorum, which is 100, would be 10. And some people took that to mean that the discussion was about reducing quorum to 10. Obviously, that number would mean that the Select Board and the Finance Committee could hold the town meeting by themselves, and that's not the intention. So I did try to clear that up, although that's always difficult to do online. But at this point, I think, the discussion would be, and some of the data that I sent you from the clerk's office on the participation that we've had at town meetings in the past, whether it be annual or special, does indicate that we generally get less participation in the fall, now the winter. There was one meeting that got quite a bit as it related to start times of schools, pulled in over 400 people, but otherwise, there's not a significant amount of participation in the fall, so that's something to consider. The idea not only would be what is the right number to bring in safely for a town meeting to allow us to do business, but also one that we can maintain at our annual town meeting, because if we were so close to 100, every time somebody got up to the bathroom, we had the clerks playing defense a little bit to make sure they weren't leaving, because we would lose quorum. And so, while Bonnie did a great job doing that, I think, we could try to avoid that by looking at what the right number would be, that we're obviously getting enough input from the town, but also allowing us to do town business. So that's sort of the conversation in a nutshell, and again, it is, because of the posting, it is sort of this board's ability to go anywhere between 10 and 100, essentially, based on that, and any questions you have for the chief or I, we'd be happy to answer.
So, as a board, let's open the discussion. Obviously, to do something or nothing at all, I guess, two options. We'll start with you, Ben, on your thoughts on the quorum issue.
So, a couple things, more comments. But I think one thing we have to make clear here is that reducing the quorum doesn't mean we're capping the number of people that can attend. What we're saying is that we want to be able to do business if less than 100 people are in attendance. That's really what we're trying to say here. So if hypothetically 107 people came, just like in July 2020, we would have more than 100. But the expectation might be that there could be fewer. It is concerning that the May town meeting usually has more attendance than the October town meeting. It's a little more interesting in most years. But that being said, we're also doing it on a Saturday, so that has a different, that could have consequences as well. So that's the first thing. I just want to make sure that's clear, that this doesn't mean we're capping the number of people that can be in attendance. That cap would be based on the size of the room, the auditorium, which, if I'm not mistaken, we can fit about 200 people and still socially. What is the number? 142. Okay, that was, I don't know why. Okay, so 142 people could attend. And so I don't love reducing a quorum, but I also realize we have some business we need to attend to. If we didn't, obviously, we're not doing this because we want to, but we're doing this because we need to make sure that the town can continue to function at the right levels and get the right things done. Did the moderator have an opinion or any comments, or what did the moderator say about this? It's 50.
With his comfort level?
Was that a not less than, or that was his choice?
That was where he felt it would be a reasonable number for the board to move to. Our recommendation back in the spring, summer, if we were to have lowered it then, would have been 75 at that time, and it was a very different experience with the spread of the virus in the community at that time, so I too was landing comfortably at 50. Again, to Mr. Sparrow's point, we're not going to bar the door, but I'd like to be able to start taking votes and take action if 50 people show up.
Okay. So, I mean, I was thinking, personally, 50 seems low, but at the same time, I want to also defer to people, experts, and if they think is reasonable. Has anyone else weighed in? Have you gotten any other feedback from the other parties? Others like the finance committee or any other committees or anything?
Not related to a specific number, no.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm open to doing it. I'm open to explaining.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, there are a couple key things in making the decision. First, I'm just going to confirm with you, Travis. Thank you for confirming 142. That was the number. No overflow rooms, just 142. That'll be sort of where we're at with a number.
We probably could go a little bit higher depending on how many people we put on the stage who are participating in the background of it.
Okay.
But we wouldn't be able to get to 200.
Okay.
In that room. The challenge of an overflow room is the mechanics that it takes to set that up.
Okay.
And we spent a lot of time creating overflow capacity back in July that got used by 3 people.
Yeah.
So it's a big undertaking for town staff, school personnel. So that's a consideration.
Are there measures that could be taken to get the capacity in the auditorium safely above 142? Are there measures, changes that could be put in place to allow for greater capacity?
Unlike the Placentino Miller, where we were able to set the chairs, there's fixed seating in the auditorium, so we are bound by where it is bolted to.
Okay. All right, so I have a high level of confidence in the safety of a town meeting. This is not a concern of mine for a variety of different reasons, and I'm not saying that lightly or dismissively. I do believe that the content of the warrant should be out for public consumption before our board takes the vote. That's my personal feeling. The feedback that I have had from residents who have contacted me, and it's been quite a significant amount of feedback, is that's their one concern, that if there were anything on the warrant that was contentious, they would not want to see the warrant reduced, albeit most people are thinking it's as low as 10, and I don't think that's where this board is leaning, but it would certainly make me feel much more comfortable to know that residents had the ability to see the warrant, and then when we have this discussion on a vote, if they have concerns about a particular article, they can weigh in. So that's something that's important to me. I'm comfortable in the length of the meeting. I think at 15, 16 articles, we're going to be in and out relatively quickly. I'm not concerned that the time of exposure is going to be great. I think that there will be tremendous public interest in the articles. I think that we will have people. I'm not particularly concerned about reaching a quorum of even 100, because, again, I think that many of the articles were driven by public interest in these articles. So it's my impression that we will have good turnout. So I wanted just to clarify, the publication, of the warrant articles will be on November 20th in one of the local papers.
The 19th, it will be in the Metro West Daily News. Depending on your actions tonight, I'll probably post the warrant online tomorrow, discuss with the Finance Committee tomorrow night. Again, the articles we've sort of posted here in the past and have been run by the Holliston Reporter based on the screenshots that we've been having up on during your meetings. But in terms of the actual document being up, it'll either be tomorrow or Wednesday. And there was some action taken in terms of votes of the Finance Committee last Tuesday of the articles that you had sent forward to them previously. A number of them were voted unanimously in support of. There's still some for them to do, as there are some for you to do tonight. And so it's not all done. I would say, to your point of if there's anything contentious, I think at 16, while there may be a disagreement on one or two, I think that, we can certainly potentially pursue consent agenda on a few items to help move it along. But yeah, that's
Well, with all
where we
due
are.
respect to the Finance Committee and the decisions they may make on their recommendations, that's not going to pull our board to a place where we are changing articles on. Those decisions have been made. So what is published is what will be the warrant. There
Right.
may be
The warrant
debate.
should be published tomorrow or Wednesday. That would be more than 14 days ahead of special town meeting. The legal notice of town meeting needed to be sent to the printer today to get it in the paper with about 14 days ahead of time for the 16 articles that we believe will be on there. And we'll I'll make sure that more information gets to the Holliston Reporter as soon as possible, when you're all done taking the action that we need to.
Last question, is November 23rd, next Monday, too late to vote as a board to reduce the quorum?
My only concern, and Chief Cassidy could correct me, but if I need to do a legal notice 7 days before they take a vote on the quorum, obviously if I put a public notice in tomorrow, it will not be 7 days ahead of next Monday.
It says that you have to give at least 7 days notice of discussion. That's not necessarily when the vote is going to take place, so I would view it very similar to what you're doing with your tax rate hearing, which is opening it, continuing it, and voting it the following week.
Okay, thank you.
So at this point, let's have a conversation about whether or not we see the need for a change in our quorum. I think you indicated you are interested in possibly changing our quorum of 100 to some other number. Are you in the same place?
Yeah, I think that it's a smart move to consider, yeah.
Okay. And you have concerns about when we do it?
I think it should come after the public has a chance to look at the articles.
Okay. And according to what Travis and Mike just said, that'll work, correct?
So next week, we would put a continuation of the discussion and vote on the town meeting quorum so that you could take action on the 23rd.
Fine with that?
Yeah, as long as it's doing the rules, I'm okay with that.
But,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just as a historical note, when we were looking at changing the quorum back in the spring, when the town clerk polled other town clerks who had reduced their quora for their spring meetings, more than half found that they still had the original quota met, or original quorum met when people showed up, even though they had reduced it to well below that. So, I again, my concern is I'd like to be able to start business, and I want to ensure that we can do it. If 107 people show up, that's great, but if only 52 arrive, I'd like us to be able to, we've got some important stuff that the town needs to know.
I think we're staring at this because of how close we were in July.
Right.
That was, and July was different, as you mentioned. We were hoping, as Travis alluded to, that with a Saturday meeting, we can attract more people who, in early December, wouldn't mind spending a couple hours getting town meeting work accomplished, rather than giving up a Monday night, which is a little bit more to ask. So I think that'll give us some more interest, and I also think it's important to announce that one of the articles has something to do with the traffic studies that we're doing. We are seeking to fund a traffic engineer that can give us some counts on these streets that we're trying to put our commercial vehicle exclusions on. Residents in the affected areas of South Street and Lowland should know this is the time for you to show up and vote. These are the things that we've been working on. As Hein alluded to, it that some of these citizen-led initiatives that are appearing in the warrant started with their interest, so now's the time to come and vote on them. So we're hoping that they do indeed appear. So I'm also confident that we'll achieve the numbers that mentioned, Mike, where, we'll achieve our normal quorum or more, but I do think we have to guard against anything that goes sideways. One thing that I think it's important to state, and I don't want to steal your thunder as our emergency manager, but you and I exchanged some text. We're going to start talking about positivity rates, as our community, like every other community in Massachusetts and this country, indeed face, growing case numbers. That positivity number really kind of starts to drive some decisions that have to be made. And earlier you stated we were at 2.42, still up, certainly up from July, I believe, when our numbers were more stable. However, things trend in the next couple of weeks in a very poor direction, approaching 5%. We may have to take other steps to evaluate whether or not it's a wise move from a public health perspective to have this meeting. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Our number in July was 0.36%.
And the risk, of course, for this board's consideration of possibly deferring or moving December into some other number is there's no guarantee the numbers will get better until some other time that, might at this point reflect the non-need for a special, and we might be just looking at it as a spring. It's a long time to wait to complete some of the work that's staring us that we really need to accomplish. So we'll do that. I don't have any problem waiting until next Monday to make a decision. I think you bring up a great point, as always. And I think it'll give citizens a better insight as to what they may or may not be looking for.
Great, thank you.
You good with that?
That's fine.
So if that's okay, we'll continue this discussion. If you would mind bringing it up on our agenda for next Monday, we would appreciate it. Any questions from those on our Zoom for the quorum? Hi, Stacy, how are you tonight?
Good evening. How are you all?
Doing well, thanks. What's on your mind?
So I'm just curious because I've been part of some other conversations. Has there been any discussion about considering an outdoor special town meeting, for example, on the football field or someplace else outside, especially where our numbers are going up? I think there is some concern that you may or may not have already heard from the public about having an indoor special town meeting. So I'm just curious if you could talk to that just briefly, or if you're not prepared for that, next week. But I have had some conversations with people saying, how come we're not doing an outdoor special town meeting, especially where fall athletics have ended. And I think people are just concerned about that being indoors.
Sure. I will tell you that we have talked about it. Those talks happened many months ago before the annual town meeting. We looked at a lot of different variations, including the so-called drive-in model. Mike, I'll allow you to answer this, but I do recall that when we would talk about the special, weather was a factor, and the unpredictable nature of New England weather in early December. If you want to briefly explain some of the feedback that you gave this board when those decisions were made.
Absolutely. Thank you. So a couple factors to consider with regards to why a football field outdoor would not work on December 5th. First of all, we don't own the chairs. When the high school did their graduation ceremony in July, they rented chairs. They knew exactly how many chairs they needed. They knew exactly how many chairs they needed to set up because people had to pre-register. We don't know who's coming to town meeting. We don't know how many chairs to get. Do we order 150? Do we order 200? Spacing them out, again, it's time intensive. And so it's also from a sound engineering perspective, it would be very costly for us to rent the sound equipment that we would need to be able to conduct business on the field, have everyone be able to hear, as well as have people be able to participate if they are present.
So certainly, you're making a financial argument that those were barriers of discussion, and I remember that. Just to push back, CARES money could afford some of those solutions.
It could.
But if I recall correctly, the weather in the unpredictable nature of what we would endure or likely encounter was another reason why this was possibly not something we could pull off. Now, some communities have done the driving model, right? They come in cars and they're able to communicate through some closed channel. Was that evaluated?
It was. And again, there are still some costs there. I know that there was some concern concern with regards to registering and ensuring that the people who are in the cars are registered voters, and how you keep track of who's in and out. Again, these are logistic challenges that aren't insurmountable, but especially during the winter months would be a problem. I remember a first Saturday in December several years ago where our Holliston High School Panthers were participating in the Super Bowl down in Gillette, and there was over a foot of snow on the ground. So these are unknowns that we can't, right here in November, predict what the weather's going to be like that day.
And in your estimation, going back to the model, the auditorium was thought to be the best for ventilation and spacing, is that correct?
Yes.
Stacy?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, so I mean, I understand how in impossible times creativity is everything, so I completely appreciate the creative ideas of our community to solve this problem. So I would just flip it and say, what makes it safe? What makes it appropriate? And I go back to some recommendation that the state and also I believe the CDC gave. It's time together, the amount of time that you're together, and to limit that. And I feel that at 15, 16 articles, we're looking at a reasonable time. It's distance maintained. You're talking about that ability in the high school auditorium to maintain that 6 or more feet of separation. You're talking about ventilation, and I know that the high school's ventilation system was checked, and it is appropriate. It can handle the kind of airflow that keeps people safe, and then the need to wear masks will be mandated. So when you put all that together, it certainly sets up as a very safe space for people to gather. But I don't dismiss the concerns of the community, but that's certainly the lens through which I'm looking at is, are we able to meet the safety protocols that need to be in place comfortably and confidently? And I don't see a question as to being able to do that. I see an assurance that we'll be able to do that. But
And I would also proffer that the schools have a demonstrated history of success in the previous weeks of being able to hold in-person gatherings without there being spread occurring in that venue. I did have concerns with the outdoor setting of the graduation, even though we had the chairs set up. We explained to people where they needed to be. In the lag between when they arrived in their
I don't know what you're talking
in their
about.
segment, people were congregating, and that was a challenge. And we did not have that issue at town meeting. People were not clumped together, you know, in close proximity. They were really very compliant. So I am confident that if we have an orderly flow of people coming in and they go and take their seat, they're going to remain there, and we're not going to have some of the issues that might happen if they had to queue up ahead of time to gather for an outdoor ceremony.
And you reported no tracing back to town meeting as a spreader, or no positive cases were traced back to time spent in town meeting. I remember you reporting that.
That's correct. In the week subsequent, there were no correlation between the addresses of attendees and positive cases in town.
So we have precedent and data to support that it was a safe environment at that time as well.
Yes.
And other communities have done it too. So they've had similar experiences.
There's a community tonight that has an indoor town meeting in the high school auditorium that
Medway?
I think, I'm sorry?
Is Medway doing it now? I think Medway's doing it now.
I was thinking of a Cape community, but I can check with Medway as
I
well.
thought
I think there's some that
November 16th.
we're gonna wanna check in with and make sure if anything new and creative has been thought of since our July town meeting, which I thought was very effective as well, and
Yeah.
credit to Chief Cassidy for that. You know,
It was your first
certainly-
night. We wanted to make a good impression.
I was very impressed. But so, you know, I can certainly, we can reach out to those communities as well that have been holding them indoors, obviously as the weather has become more of a concern.
But Stacy, if I had to wear boots and a hat and a jacket, I would.
No,
think
yeah, I agree. And I'm asking the question not for myself. I'm really asking it on behalf of people I've heard. And I agree with you. I think that, I have full confidence in our emergency management director and the Board of Health. And so but I did want to just bring that to your attention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And while we are clarifying what we can and cannot do in terms of how we conduct our town meeting, this is not for the benefit of the board, but for those who are listening. The people who ask, why can't we do a remote participation, is because we have an open government form of town meeting. If we were a representative town government, representative town meeting, we could do a remote participation under the emergency regulations, but because we are open, we have to have people show up in person.
Don't go too far. We have a question from Aunt Louise also. Hi, Aunt Louise.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. This was really just an add-on to Stacy's question. I completely understand the impracticalities of trying to do this outside. And Tina, you're so awesome. I don't know if I want to put my coat on and sit out there. But I'm wondering if the field house was considered, because it seems to me that the capacity, airflow, ability to sanitize that place, and also just minimizing people crawling through aisles and across each other is significantly better, much the way the Placentino Cafetorium was. And it's segregated from the rest of the school. So if this meeting goes on for more than one evening, it's less of an issue. And I'm saying that not knowing whether there are classes being conducted in there, but I'm imagining that could be addressed.
Yes, please, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne Louise. The field house was considered. First of all, it does come back to the chair issue. The chairs are at Placentino Miller. There are not sufficient chairs at the high school complex, which would require school resources to move them from one location to the other, to set them up. Field house is being used for curriculum delivery, and actually, without casting shade at anyone, I would suggest that the HVAC system for the auditorium is probably better suited to be able to address the audience than it would be in the field house. I've been in many a basketball game in the winter months, and it's not always warm. And if we're trying to introduce more outside air, as we are during this time, then you would definitely be wearing your jacket if we were in the field house.
Oh, yeah, you would, but at least you do have the garage doors and the cross ventilation from the other side. But I trust you. I know the chairs are a challenge. You'd have to set them up, much as we do for graduation, but imagine it could be done. But that's okay. I just wanted to see if that option had been explored. Thank you.
It has been explored, yes. Thank you.
All right. I think we have arrived at the end point of that item. We will move on at this point and hold this until next Monday to the discussion of the special town meeting warrant.
There's 10 days right now.
I think Anna Louise already spoke. You're good, right?
Carol has.
I haven't spoken. It's Carol. Can you just answer, what is the capacity we're talking about that will be going into the auditorium?
142.
Okay. And so of that, I mean, we're talking a town of, I don't know how many thousands. So 142 people who do show up are the ones who will determine the votes for the rest of the people.
That's correct.
And have we ever thought of changing our bylaws so that we're not an open, but we're more representative?
I can tell you I've not thought about that since I've been on the board. I don't know about my colleagues, but that hasn't come up. That's something that possibly the governance committee can look at as they study our form of government over the next 2.5 years.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Carol. So now we will move to the town meeting warrant discussion. Travis.
Great. Chris, could you put up the articles? And then I would suggest that we start with the one that has our school people here with us, so we can get them in and out if possible. But just a list of articles so I can set the tone, and then we can go on with that. So the yellow ones, as we said, you've already voted them and passed to the Finance Committee. They took that up last Tuesday night, and they will again tomorrow night. I'll be with them again. Article 16, the road acceptance, has been added and is needed, confirmed with Jay Tallerman, and I can go into that shortly. The last four there will be, I would recommend that we open the warrant tonight, remove them so that we have the nice, concise 16-article warrant. They are not needed for a variety of reasons, the last two being that they're reflected in Article 1, and 17 and 18 being that they're simply not needed at this time. And so, as I mentioned, as related to Article 5, the capital budget, we do have the school committee here. They took a vote on the 12th for two capital items that they have requested. So if the chair would be amenable, I would put that next, and we can put that up on the screen.
Let's do that.
Great. The last one that I sent you, Chris, perfect. All right, so I have a couple changes just before we get to them. The number 8, the public safety radio interoperability, Chief Cassidy and Chief Stone, this was related to a public safety project. They wanted to do their due diligence to make sure that there was not going to be an additional cost to adding this to the poll. Chief Cassidy, on his birthday, got a $30,000 gift saying that it is not needed. He's very happy as his arms are raised.
Today, Chief Cassidy's birthday?
It is.
Really?
Should we sing to him?
Happy birthday again, Mike.
Not for his gift account, though.
And so since the last time we discussed this, that has been removed. Additionally, item one of the conversations that I had with the Capital Subcommittee was that was pulled off of a statewide contract to find a Chevy Equinox. And the request was, could we look to see if there were other models that fit our needs that would be less expensive? So we did that. And James Keese was able to find through another statewide contract with MHQ, who is somebody that we also use, Chief Cassidy uses common in public safety, to find another vehicle, not the Chevy Equinox, but a Jeep Compass that would fit our needs and would be less expensive at $20,100. So that is a change from the last conversation that we had. And then on the bottom two, those are the ones that were just voted on 11, 12, and if there's any questions on the other ones, otherwise, obviously you have the school here to discuss it with you.
So, Stacy, we'll start with you. If you, on behalf of your committee, would like to introduce to our board the items that you're presenting to the town this evening for capital consideration.
Sure. Stacy, would
Yeah.
this be something I could do as the budget chair?
Yeah, I was just gonna introduce Dr. Kuska. This is her. She attended she attended annual town meeting. She had been hired like 3 days before. So this is her first sort of intro to you in terms of special town meeting. So I just wanted to welcome her to this for the Capitol. And I believe Mr. Boudet is actually in town hall with you. So he's also here to answer any questions you may have.
Keith is
All
here.
right.
We're
All
ready
right,
when you-
Louise.
There are two items here. The first of these two is the annual purchase of Chromebooks, which are typically every year we will put in a request to replace 2 grades worth of Chromebooks so that we're managing that inventory as they come to end of life, and we're rotating through a portion of the Chromebooks each year so that there's no single year where we're purchasing 10 grades worth or 6 grades worth, if you will. So this year, or for the coming fiscal year, we're looking to replace the Chromebooks for grade 6 and grade 9. That comes to 480 units. And ordinarily, we would be asking for this money in the spring, but the pandemic has dramatically changed the supply chains and lead time in the technology space. And if any of you recall, when we came to the town requesting money for the Chromebooks to begin the current school year, we were deeply concerned because we were looking at upwards of a 4-month lead time. And we just barely got them in the door in time right at the end of the summer to prep and prepare and distribute them to students. We are concerned that we will encounter that again. And despite all the recent and encouraging news with the vaccine, we don't want to risk the possibility that we could still be dealing with that in the spring, that Springtown meeting could be delayed into the summer. So we're asking for the town to approve the allocation now so that we're prepared to put in those POs in early spring and get ahead of the demand curve for those units. So that's the first of the two. The second is the Fieldhouse insulation project. And I'm more than happy to go into a little history on this, but I'll spare you that. This project is designed to purchase and install panels that will achieve two purposes. The first, and frankly, the primary purpose, is to address the visible peeling paint across the upper walls of the field house, especially on the exterior side where you have the, the big garage doors opening, and in the back. So the panels came up as a solution among several that Keith looked into, and I'd love to have him talk to that. But they're a very efficient way to do this, so much so that it occurred to him and the Green Communities team that we should apply for a state grant, and that's why we're applying for this now. The state grant was approved, but it doesn't cover the entire scope of the project. So what we're asking for this evening is a total of $90,000, which is a little bit up from the $40,000 that we had originally asked, to cover some additional materials and labor costs. The real challenge that we're facing is that we don't have the available staff in-house to install the panels to cover the peeling paint. In an ordinary year we would, but our custodial and maintenance staff is entirely flat out dealing with daily sanitation in the schools. And we have an expiration date on when this project would have to be completed to fully qualify for the state grant. So Keith, I don't know if there's anything else that you would want to add to that.
No? Nope, he's good, you covered it. All right. Let's see if we have any questions, Annalise. Beth?
Just a couple quick questions. The first one, the Chromebooks, we're saying this is replacing the spring request, so you're saying that we're not going to be requesting Chromebooks in the spring?
This would be our intent to cover the annual tranche of Chromebooks that we would ordinarily request. I'm always reluctant to say never, but I'm very close to saying that we would not ask for any additional Chromebooks. I can't promise you that there couldn't be an adjustment to this, but I don't think there would be.
The intent. Okay.
Yeah.
The acceleration of the program,
Got it.
timing-wise.
Okay. That's kind of what I thought, but I just wanted to confirm that. So with the field house installation, this particular project, this should get it done and be done for 20 years, 25 years. We should be good for a while on this.
The project itself came about because, again, with the peeling paint, which the quick tour of this is, the wall prep was done improperly for a galvanized steel wall. Thus, paint would peel. We scrape, paint over it. We scrape, we paint over it. And so... So again, we paint, it would peel, we paint, it would peel, and we reached the point where more was peeling than we were painting at one point, so we stopped. A local resident who's in the painting business, Tim Kenny, came by and talked about it. He had connections with Sherwin-Williams Corporate, who came in. Their experts came in and basically told me I had three bad options, which was to sandblast, which is miserable in the space, chemically treat it, to strip it, or to cover it. The first two, we still had to repaint it as well, so the cost would be exorbitant. I mean, there's no question about that. The covering it, we kind of all collectively agreed that, well, there's an option. We explored solid panels, this, that, the other thing. So one of Tim Kenny's typical vendors came by, took a look at it, and he goes, I may have an idea about something. And he emailed me back, and he emailed me these panels that are insulated panels. So in talking with the previous superintendent, Brad, over this subject, I was like, well, maybe we could buy a few, just see and try to hang on and see how it would work and stuff like that. Then with Chris Mayo and the Green Communities Act, he said, do you have any projects? We still have a little bit of money left over and stuff. I said, I got these panels that are insulated panels that maybe, again, would be able to work into this project. He had, was $50,000 available in the project, so we put it in for $50,000, knowing the project was going to exceed that. The panels are $80,000 to $90,000. The labor is $40,000 to $50,000 was the estimates. So we put it in for $50,000, and lo and behold, we got the money. And that's kind of like, okay, now what do we do? The ultimate problem is that we can't, with our labor, we can't get it done by the mid-January date that it has to be done for the town to be able to do another Green Communities, grant for next year. So that's where we're under the gun for it. So it's that simple. So yes, these panels in theory would stay up there as long as the field house is there.
Okay.
You know, they don't wear out, they shouldn't, you know, they'll outlive us.
Okay.
To that point, that I think the point was made by Keith at a previous subcommittee meeting, capital subcommittee meeting, that the intention would be, even if the SOI was selected on the high school, that this facility itself would live on in some capacity. So it's not like, you know, that this building is going anywhere, that particular space.
Right, because again, you know, part of MSBA, they don't build field houses. So again, the new building, if we were getting a new building as opposed to a renovated building, a new building would somehow have to incorporate the existing field house because the space is too valuable for us to lose as a community.
Yeah, just to be clear, Travis, it would live on in exactly the capacity that it is. It would have to sit where it is. It can't be changed or moved. That's our field house until, you know, time in perpetuity.
Goody.
Questions, Tina?
Yeah, so, Anne Louise, this is just short-term memory housekeeping for me, so forgive me
Yeah.
and indulge me here. I'm looking at the town meeting warrant from July of this year, and there's a technology request from the schools for $122,000. And then I go to the supporting materials for that town meeting warrant from the budget subcommittee for the schools. And I see Chromebooks for kindergarten, 6th grade, and 9th grade. This is not a duplication, so we're not asking for Chromebooks twice. So what was the appropriation for the 122,214 in Article 13 back in July? Because it's listed here in the Budget Subcommittee's capital request as being, again, kindergarten and grades 6 through 9. And then I'm hearing tonight that it's also for grade 6 and 9. So what am I missing?
6 and
Well,
9
it's
is next year's 6 and 9. The 6 and 9 is from the spring is for this year's 6 and 9.
Oh, because they travel with the students.
Yes, that's their
Never mind,
That's
I'm all set.
their Chromebook for
Yeah.
3 or 4 years.
Okay,
Till
got it.
that's
Yeah.
been part of the
Yeah.
Chromebook that is.
Yeah,
I should know that as I have an 8th grader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Makes sense.
okay. I mean, but it's real. That's actually, I'm really glad you asked, because it's really important for the public to know these are not
You might get
duplicative.
questions. Right,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anne Louise, for presenting that. The only question I have is that the amount that we've been tracking for the field house installation was 40,000, and you mentioned it has gone up to 90,000, and you gave an explanation for that. Did the school committee vote at the 40,000 or the $90,000 level?
They voted the 90,000.
And that was for the additional work and effort to put the panels up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
Just curious, Keith, you mentioned something about when Brad was here, he said, let's try out these panels.
Mhm.
Did you do that?
No, we didn't have time.
Okay.
We were going to do it this spring, and something.
And then Chris called.
Something happened.
But then Chris called. Yes, when Chris called. Oh, but we were going to try it even after Chris called. We didn't. I'll be honest, we didn't think it was going to get funded.
So how do we know that we've got a proof of concept? How do we know it's gonna work?
Well, wait, let's talk about what this is. The panels are designed to visually cover, so once they're up, they will work. It's not a
Well, right. At the end of the day,
functional.
these are called insulation panels, not drapes. So I would think that as an insulation thing, there's gotta be some insulating value, correct?
Yeah, it's an R13.
It's R13.
Yes.
Okay. And has it been used in a similar environment in the past?
It's been used in the past. I can't say that this is the creative idea by a vendor who knows the panels. So.
But the vendor that is providing the panels has a recommendation that this is a suitable environment for an
Yeah.
R13 insulation
Yes.
panel.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and it's not his panels. I mean, he's buying them from they'd be acquired by a third party.
And Louise, what do they look like?
I guess we'd have to show you a picture. They're panels. It's like,
It's a quilted panel. It's what was it, Chris? 30 feet tall?
For those of you who can't see this, Keith today is acting it out for us.
It was like 30 feet tall, I think.
Do they just look like a full blanket?
Yeah, I mean, it's there, again, again, it's a quilted, it's quilted, so there's a lining inside of it with two, how was like plastic, but you know, the outside is a synthetic material.
A basic barrier or something.
Yeah, and so it creates the R13 value, which is why, again, it's for that space, which the R value of a galvanized steel wall may be a negative number. You know, again, it's a plus, so. I mean,
and how do they get installed? Do they hang or?
They would hang. They would hang because we still need access, which is, again, one of the subtleties that is missed by a lot of the rigid panels that people are looking at. We still need to there's a lot of conduit, a lot of pipes going along those walls back there. So we need to be able to gain access to it. So we would hang the panels from the top girder. There's a supporting girder all the way around the top. We would hang them from that girder. The weight isn't substantial enough. I had an engineer look at it, a local engineer. And again, panel-wise, it just allows us to pull the panel aside.
On 3 walls, Keith?
4.
What are you putting on the external one? So?
Yep.
Okay.
There it goes.
It's almost like the benefit of a drop ceiling, if you will, where you can move a square aside to get behind if you need to. And Keith, we didn't really talk much of this, but I would think there's some sound absorption as well because it's a fabric panel.
Yeah, that's actually the main purpose of it, Anne Louise. That's the main purpose is actually to use it in soundproofing spaces, but it does have an R value, and again, it would give us a consistent. There's a light gray and a beige one that I was looking at, considering the walls are beige. So those are the 2 colors I was considering.
And that actually is a real benefit to us because we do use the space as instructional space. The echo in there is a challenge for other major events and whatnot. So I'm not sure we would have gone ahead just for that, but that is a real benefit.
And the town clerk liked the fact that there's maybe some R value in it that might help. So.
Does this particular project have any benefit to the instructional flex that you guys are having to endure during the pandemic? In other words, could this cost move to a CARES Act expense because it's enabling more suitable learning under these circumstances, Keith? You get my drift?
I do. I'm trying to decide whether I want my hands cuffed in the back or the front.
Well,
I think that's a reach. Yeah. I mean, we're currently using the space fully. So
you haven't done it through a winter yet.
Haven't done it through a winter. Oh, we do it every winter though. I mean, we're not putting desks in the field house. It's just our normal wellness classes. So there's no change in use of the space right now. So a lot of schools I do know use their gymnasiums as classrooms.
Right.
Ours is impractical. It's actually too big.
Okay.
I mean,
we're having instruction in there.
No, not wellness class. I mean, that would be a reach, would it not, Mike? Or
well,
the guidance for the
One second, Annalise. Mike.
Sorry.
The guidance for the second phase of the CARES Act funding, which allows for minor modification of municipal buildings. I too would be sharing a cell with you. I don't think that this would pass as a minor modification. Minor modification is cutting a door and making it a French door or a Dutch door for the town administrator's office. That's a minor modification. Paneling on multiple walls in the field house would not be minor.
I mean, we changed that fixed window in the nurse's office at Adams into a window that would open for ventilation purposes.
Minor modification.
Exactly.
Annalise, did you have something to add? Sorry.
I had a thought on that, but you know what? It might not be a good one, so I'll reserve that.
Very good. All right. I think we've heard enough on the school's presentation, unless any other member of the school committee or Dr. Custer wishes to add anything. We good?
Yeah, no, I think we have all the information.
Thank you.
All right. We have a question from a citizen. If you guys don't go too far, our friend Carol has a question. If you would like to ask that now, Carol, go ahead.
How many quotes have we received for putting those panels up? I mean, it seems like we're paying $40,000 for the panels and $50,000 for installation. Have we gotten multiple bids to know that's what the cost is?
we haven't gone down the bid process yet. We just get quotes early on, just because, again, it's difficult to get bids when we don't even know if the project's gonna go forward. So the quote from this one vendor was $90,000 for the panels, which is in the right range, because I priced them out individually, and $50,000 for the labor.
And so not shown on the screen here is the fact that $50,000 is coming from the Green Communities grant from the state, and $90,000 includes the additional costs of the actual materials plus then the labor.
All set on that. All right. Carol, you good?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. We'll move on. Travis, if you wanted to pick it up, now that we're first from the schools, we'll move on.
Absolutely. So I would just ask.
Thank you to our school friends for coming in.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you, everybody from the schools. So I would just say we can go down this list. I think you would want it to go through the actual document. So at this point, if there were any other questions on Article 5, I know you've had the ability to talk about some of these things in the past, but you did want to wait to take a vote until you had heard from the schools after their vote. So I could certainly run down this list again, but if you're comfortable with it, I won't sort of take that time.
I'm comfortable. Are you comfortable? I don't see too many major changes. They've answered my question on the change on the.
I've talked about these so many times in the capital subcommittee that I pretty much have nothing left to say.
No, and I don't want to just spill a bear. I guess the highlights, right? The air packs and bottles we've discussed. The chief feels it is very much needed. It is a substantial cost. These were replaced 15 years ago through a grant. We were in the grant process up until recently when we were told that we would not be getting it. We cannot wait. The materials cannot be replaced, and so it is a need, unfortunately. But at the same point, we want to make sure everybody's safe. And then I would just point out, because I think we've discussed most, the townhouse septic. This is one where we're removing the easement article later on. We think that we have a viable solution on town-owned land, and that $150,000 would be the highest price of a solution to our septic needs. And that the facilities manager and I have done quite a bit of due diligence, and we've got quite a bit of help from the septic committee and Paul Saulnier. And so we'll be bringing a solution forward to you in the future, but we think that 150 is the right number to guarantee that we can move forward in a timely fashion. Otherwise, I think most of these have been discussed.
The facility manager's vehicle, talk to me about that again. It's shown as a Chevy Equinox, originally quoted at $25,359.
Sure.
You got a new vehicle. What did you end up scoping?
So a couple things. We go through the statewide contract, and I was explaining this to the capital subcommittee, the benefits of it. We get great deals, that we make sure we get the best warranties available and all of those types of things. The Chevy Equinox was based on the fact that we were going through a statewide contract that we use for Chevy Silverados to the DPW. It was requested that we make sure that we're scoping out sort of everything within the realm of the specs that the facilities manager was looking for in a vehicle to transport things. And so, not simply looking at Chevy. So MHQ is another statewide contract where we look at other vehicles, and we were able to find something similar, which would be a Ford Escape. That was also in the $25,000 range. But at the $20,000 range, $20,100, we received a quote from MHQ for a Jeep Compass, which we feel it matches the miles per gallon we need as a green community, and the dimensions that we're looking for in a vehicle for a facilities manager.
The dimensions being the capacity, the cargo capacity.
Right, for small ladders.
Did you folks look at any hybrid vehicles?
So what we looked at, I believe, and James may be on the call, but essentially looking at vehicles that were within the green communities was sort of the criteria we used, right? So the miles per gallon, not necessarily the hybrid specifically. The hybrid cost would be more as a per unit, but then, the savings would be the idea that we'd be saving on gas over time. But no, these were vehicles that fit the green communities, but not hybrid.
Any questions, guys?
No, I, like Ben, have heard these talked about, because we all have, so I feel confident.
What do you need from us, Travis, for Article 5? Do you want a motion to approve it as posted here?
Sure.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the Article 5 as listed. That would include the adjustments made on the school's field house insulation for total of $1,255,316. Did I just pass my eye test? Good.
Yes.
Pretty good.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries.
Okay, so, put that back up. So at this point, I think the chair had indicated that you'd like to go through the document, if possible. So I have given you all a printed out copy, but also the most recent copy. This has been proofread by a number of staff members, which I appreciate, 2 of them being in the room right now. Also the finance staff, and I can go through however you'd like. We can have the clerk read, if he's up to it, so, whatever the chair would prefer.
Should we make the clerk read it, Tina?
Is he just gonna read what? 'Cause
The
we've
whole
got-
warrant?
No.
Do we want to make a birthday boy read it?
No, I think we have it on the screen for the audience
He
to
was
see.
chairman of the speech and debate.
Oh.
Well, we know that because earlier you said quora, so.
I think
That, either that or he
We
took
all-
some
we all took
Latin
that one out.
over those years.
On your birthday, you're allowed to flex
Allow
like
me,
that. but-
allow me to guide the discussion if I could. We'll start with Article 1, just as a quick review. I'll state the article, the amount, and general interest. This is, the article that Travis has put a lot of work into, actually, to see if the town will vote to raise an appropriate transfer from available funds, a sum of money for the purpose of supplementing various accounts for the town's fiscal year 21 annual budget, voted previously by the town under Article 4 of the warrant for the 2020 town meeting. This totals $564,800, and it includes adjustments to personnel salaries, personal services and salaries, as well as a reserve transfer associated with, town expenses. This does not include any town salaries associated with schools. Is that correct?
No, nor department heads.
Just staff. And so as a result, the Article 2 has to be adjusted to reflect these increases, correct?
Yeah, so this, something within the 564, which is just under $30,000, is related to 1% COLA adjustments for non-union personnel who can be found in the job classification in Article 2. And so Article 2 is necessary to essentially adjust accordingly, plus there are 2 positions that I'll reference when we get to Article 2 as well. And then the other 2 highlights I would make is that what we're trying to do through Article 1 is set ourselves up to make it through this fiscal year, this trying fiscal year. A couple issues that we know are coming up, right? So of the $250,000 is designed to make sure that we've addressed our unemployment insurance. If that is addressed at the federal and state level, that may not be necessary, but this bunches us against the possibility that it is not fixed in time for the end of the fiscal year. Additionally, we've got into a few one-time issues here that I think, provided we get through this fiscal year, will not carry into FY22, and so I think this is really about getting through a tough year.
Yep. Legal services are also included. Expect some legal services associated with various actions in the coming months. You're making the reserve fund, the reserve account whole, and some miscellaneous items for grant writing support, HR benefits specialists, and various part-time hours for personnel through the end of fiscal year 20, correct?
Yeah, so a number of them, and I do highlight some description in here. Again, this, as I mentioned, this will be posted for people to read. So part of the part-time hours is that we've accomplished quite a bit through the CARES Act, but that money is not available after December 31st, right? So assuming that we'll continue to need those part-time services, IT support being one, this is planning ahead for a number of those types of items.
Moving on, Article 2, you touched on it, Travis, but again, this just corrects some of the financial math associated with Article 1, correct?
Yes, it also specifically adds the IT support person to the intermittent rates, which was not previously, did not exist before COVID, and then also adds HR benefits specialist to the administrative support area, and Mary and I will be having quite a bit more discussion on that with you in the future.
Article 3 seeks to move $400,000 back into the stabilization fund from which it was withdrawn during the annual town meeting. This will bring the balance. Wait a minute. In addition, we're transferring the overlay of $484,000 that was realized amount is now going to stabilization totaling $884,000, correct?
Correct.
Article 4, this is the capital expenditure fund. So we're moving money here. In this case, it's used to fund capital expenses with the proposed use of the capital expenditure fund and other articles, including number 4. This article would offset the use of capital expenditure money by transferring $1,419,775 from free cash, which was certified by Mass DOR at $2.65 million, and $325,000 from the tax levy to the capital expenditure fund, resulting in a projected balance of $7.24 million. So this particular article will be moving 1.744 into that balance, correct?
Yes.
Again, Holliston has a very healthy stabilization and capital expenditure fund, which are pretty much rainy day funds in their own right to help us sustain operations during difficult times.
So I would add that Article 4 then also offsets the use of Article 5, which is the one that we just discussed.
Correct.
So I think that the end result is that both our stabilization fund and our capital expenditure fund increases the balances through this warrant.
Article 5, we just talked about, you're gonna have to make an adjustment there. Looks like the total of 1.24 is a little off based on some changes you made at the last minute,
So I
correct?
sent a revised one. So the total capital budget will be 1.255316. Of that, 1,150,316 from capital expenditure fund and $105,000 from free cash, as related to specific projects.
Try to get the program. This one I was reading from November 13th. Did you send another one?
Yeah, the print, it's pronounced.
I also gave you a print.
Print out
If you'd like that.
as the rule.
Yeah, like that.
This just has the most recent updates.
Yep.
I just one quick thing while I'm getting that, just on, Article 1, the description for the reserve fund.
Yeah, it says Rezier.
Reserve.
Got that, yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
1.255316.
And actually, one thing I would like to add at some point to these, to stabilization and the capital expenditure fund is looking at our financial policies. They have a percentage of omnibus to make sure that we are indicating what is the percentage of these, particular
Excellent point.
funds. So, because that's really the target, not necessarily the dollar value.
I think the stabilization fund with this change will be about 9.5%, 10%.
Yeah, but one of them is general, I like, it's confusing, and I had this thing, one of them I believe is based on omnibus, and one is based on, general fund, because of just sort of the nature of the rules, just to make sure that they're conforming with the financial policies.
They're well within upper end or over.
Yeah,
whatever.
no, they're good, but I wanna make sure that's
Yep.
clear.
Great point. Article 6, the Community Preservation Committee report, looking to spend $345,619 on a variety of projects, including $150,000 from the Historic Preservation Reserve for Town Hall window and repair improvements, $85,000 for Historic Preservation for the Public Library front facade repairs, $70,000 for the floor replacement and refinishing in Upper Town Hall, and $30,000 for the same purpose. Overall, vote to also appropriate $9,999 for the purposes of assisting Holliston Parks and Rec with drainage repairs at Stoddard Park, and $620 to build a boardwalk in the Winnicott Woods Eagle Scout project. So I presume Frank and the CPC has already had votes on this, they're all tied
They're all
up.
set.
Will they be presenting this at town meeting, do you know? Is he asked for?
I believe they will.
Okay, great.
So I've carried forward the at-town meeting comments here, but I will confirm that that's what he'd like instead of any added comments, but I believe that he will speak.
Great. Article 7, roadway drainage sidewalk improvements, $353,000. This is, the construction engineering task-related drainage sidewalk and roadway rehabilitation on Spring School, Exchange Union, Mechanic, and Pleasant. This was part of a project that started last year, and this will finish that work, correct?
So you're pointing at me, and this was a project, and this was a discussion that I know that you had and the Finance Committee. So the description essentially was this, which was, this has been a project that's been a priority of the Highway Department. They essentially waited for a water main project to be completed. That water main project still has some funding left in it for roadway work. which is waiting for this project. There is a number of funding sources to get this project done, leaving a delta of about $353,000. One thing that I let the Finance Committee know that I'd be bringing to you tonight is that our projected spending for that project includes the assumption that we will use Chapter 90 money from the FY22 budget of about $65,000. Because we know FY22 will be tight, and because, as we just discussed, where the capital expenditure fund balance is projected, it would be my suggestion for at least us to have a discussion of adding $65,000 to this request. I just think it would put us in better position for FY22. I respect the request, which was to say this is what we need to get it done by being creative and looking towards the future, because this project will span into FY22. But I think it would be responsible of us to think of not using FY22 Chapter 90 funding towards this when we can wrap it up potentially with this article right now.
Right.
So my suggestion would be to increase this from $353 by $65,000.
And in doing so, Travis, do we then change Article 4's language so it's not 7.19 million?
I would change that, yeah.
I'll entertain a motion to make the adjustment, on the estimated cost of this project from $353,000 to that number in addition to $65,000.
$418,000. I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, do that, carry.
Thank you. Thank you, Travis, for doing that.
Thank you. Article 8, sidewalk prioritization plan, $40,000. So this will be a study to include but not limited to design, engineering, construction management, and maintenance services relative to sidewalk prioritization plan, which will allow the town to strategize ways to improve sidewalks through improvements to existing walkways or potentially additions to the network to increase connectivity. We will be aggressive in pursuing funding through state programs such as Safe Routes to Schools, Shared Streets and Spaces, and Complete Streets. The town will need this study to guarantee the right sidewalk improvement is being prioritized in the coming years. This particular project, I've always thought was to be connected to the other public works activities. Once the study gets off the ground, I'm hoping that any elements of this plan are, for lack of a better word, talking to the water pipe replacement plan or any other public works plan.
Absolutely.
None of these should be silos.
And I would also add to change the language, I'd like to change the language a little bit to indicate not only who's being aggressive in pursuing funding, but this study will help identify that funding as well. Because there might be, it might not necessarily be in these state programs, but there might be other, so I guess to be able to say something to the effect that it might help us identify other grants or opportunities for funding for sidewalks.
So the study can recommend to the town.
Can help identify something.
Let me just insert two opportunities here. The Shared Streets and Spaces now has a winter grant program as well as what they had. They're offering it again. I'm not sure this study's gonna line us up well here for that, but these grants do come around. There's another one, I was on a call today with the Boston MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization. The Community Connections Grant is available, and the sidewalk study goes a long way in helping us apply for something like that. So just today alone, there are two new opportunities that have come up, that had we a sidewalk study, we'd be able to jump on, and so in the future should be able to, which is what this is all about.
Great. I will add that.
Is that Travis?
Got it.
Community Connections.
Community connection, yeah.
All right. Article 9, water system modernization plan, including source study, $75,000. Water supply process planning is a process that should happen periodically to help the town identify how it will meet water demands. This cost is estimated at $15,000. Additionally, the town would benefit from a well source investigation, which would include a desktop level investigation, and then 2 test well sites, estimated cost of $20,000. Finally, the town has a need to update its asset management plan and prepare it to meet new requirements from Mass DEP. The plan will be developed by an independent engineering firm that proposes the maximum feasibility study of replacing water main pipes and a strategy for exercising and isolating valves and recommendations on where looping should be prioritized within the system to limit the dead ends that impact flow and water quality. The cost of the study outside of water supply planning is estimated at $40,000. Any changes on that?
No.
Good.
Want to break from reading?
We're almost there.
All right.
I can keep going. The water main replacement, Estimated cost $2.8 million, to see if the town will vote to transfer from the water infrastructure fee, $2.8 million, related to the replacement of approximately 10,600 linear feet of water main on Winter Street. This project has been discussed at length with this board, and this cost will cover that expense.
Just, I also want to point out that this particular article does not include the roadway, because that would not be done till FY '22, because it has to lie. It has to go through a winter, basically, so.
So just like Mudville, we would probably.
Yeah, you have to wait a year, and it would probably be captured in, chapter 90 money. So it wouldn't necessarily, we wouldn't hit the budget per se, but I just want to make it clear that the road's not included in the language of this article. There might be some money that's used for that end, but, that wouldn't take place until the fall.
They won't be driving on a dirt road, though. They're getting a base coat.
Absolutely, but it has to fit.
Got it. Article 11, the water treatment plant supplemental appropriation, $850,000. This also has been widely discussed with this board. This covers, the estimated cost of borrowing authorization against the $8.375 million originally proposed at the conceptual design stage in 2018. Town also appropriated $600,000 for design under a separate town meeting article. The project is currently at 95% complete design phase, and the most recent project cost estimate is showing a need to request additional funding. So all this does is add authorization for us to borrow if the need arises once we go to bid, correct?
This appropriates from free cash so that we have the cash ability, we have the cash flow, off the bat as we wait for, the SRF. So we are going to essentially give ourselves the flexibility to start, while we determine if the SRF is going to be viable. It's going to mean that we can be as aggressive on timeline as we possibly can. And then at that point, we will, to go over $850 in the cash flow, we would then potentially be borrowing short-term through the SRF, which is a low or 0% borrowing. And then at that point, we would do a long-term borrowing. We would know the entire cost of the project.
Article number 12. Stormwater management engineering design, $93,200. This is to raise and appropriate, $93,200 for engineering services related to compliance with EPA and Mass DEP, municipal stormwater management regulations.
Sorry, it was pointed out to me on Tuesday night that I had the number transposed, and it is $92,300. I corrected on the bottom part, but not on the top, so I will fix that. So it is $92,300. That is the quote that gets us all of the information that we need for the MS4 permit, and also public outreach as it relates to our future stormwater needs in the town.
Point out it's an unfunded mandate doing this.
Very much. It is the definition of an unfunded mandate.
This is a select board sponsored article, correct?
It is.
Article 13, design engineering for 9 Green Street, $54,900. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer $54,900 for the cost of designing, engineering, and planning 9 Green Street property. We're seeking to design, engineer, and plan for a demolition plan, surface water design plan, and a lot design plan, all of which will allow the town to determine potential costs of managing the site development. The information will also allow the town to seek grant opportunities through available funds related to environmental causes and/or economic development, as the site is located downtown. Article number 14, public safety signs and equipment, $52,500. This is forwarded through the Traffic Advisory Committee. The group has started to hold hearings of residents' complaints and requests, and is now seeking the materials necessary to perform the tasks. In addition to signage, the equipment being requested would allow the Traffic Advisory Committee to message drivers and collect usage data of Holliston roads, $52,500 from free cash. Article 15, traffic and sound engineering studies, $40,000. This particular article I mentioned earlier, folks from the Lowland or South Street areas are watching. This is the article you want to show up at town meeting and vote on. This is hoping to fund engineering studies for the purposes of helping the town with its special permitting of, so you want to read this through, traffic engineering, appropriate and necessary funds to perform its own traffic engineering studies, which can, among other things, provide traffic count data necessary to pursue heavy commercial vehicle exclusions on roadways that have been negatively impacted by truck traffic. The heavy commercial vehicle exclusion process requires certain data and documentation to be approved by MassDOT. As folks in both of those affected areas know, we have been working with MassDOT, we've had a couple of site visits, we've executed a plan, now it's time to collect data and complete our application. We'll need this article approved to accomplish that task. In addition, this article seeks to fund noise complaints that have been a major component of residents associated with traffic, and the sound engineer associated with this item will be funded through the $40,000.
Yes, a noise ordinance assessment is available through these sound engineers, that is addressing, and I've given you the backup that I'll be presenting to the Finance Committee tomorrow night, but as it relates to 310 CMR 7.10, this is where the building inspector, and in some instances, the Board of Health Director has been called out as it relates to noise in certain areas. And so to address those, and when you, as a town, if we were to sort of take them as far as you go through the process, you end up needing sound engineering to be able to really address them.
Now, one thing we should state is that it is not currently intended that this service would be looking at 555 Hopping Brook, correct?
I don't have that on the list, although we could certainly add it. I did send you all the list today.
So, if I may, on Thursday night, the planning board met with, Peter Bemis, I think, yeah.
Yep.
And they requested that they conduct a sound study, so I think what you're asking is, isn't the 555 developer going to be doing that sound study?
I believe we directed that request.
Yes, it was,
What I was
yeah.
getting to. So that was, did the developer have a response to the planning board?
So I have a note from Karen Sherman today to saying that is her assumption. She spoke with Peter Bemis today, and that is again her assumption that they're going to pick that up and perform that study.
So, how does that work? Do they give us the money and we get the work done, or do they hire their own person and then give us a report?
It can work either way. I believe what Karen is waiting on is confirmation that the money will be coming before she engages anybody, so as not to get somebody on the hook and not know that the money's coming.
I'd hope it'd be the former. I'd rather not receive the funding to hire our own person.
So I do have South Street on the priority list for this article, which I gave to you. So we're looking at sort of three different areas that this article can address in some form. For the issues that we've had come up through various forums would be sound, volume, and speed on these roadways. So South Street, if we are going to pursue a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion, obviously volume is a significant concern, but I think you could certainly wrap in. I don't want to assume that sound wouldn't be some component that we may want to look at, but you're right that it could be potentially handled through the 555 group. Additionally, on here, I've listed 7 other areas that have come to my attention. If there are any for you to add, my issue here is more that the 40,000 can only go so far. But it would certainly be prioritizing what we'd like to get accomplished, where we think we, can reasonably expect to be moving Mass DOT based on our conversations in some areas, but then also addressing as many of the resident concerns as we've heard so far.
Walk me through this. I'm thinking like a resident of Woodland or South. If we approve this on December 5th, you engage the services shortly thereafter. Within a month, I would think you'd have somebody on contract to start this work. Is that accurate?
So I think there's a couple ways we can go about it. One is I'm still currently in discussions on Woodland where we have counts on pursuing that heavy commercial vehicle exclusion. So one thing we could discuss is potentially letting that play out, learning from that to go ahead on the next one, or we could, understanding that we definitely have the need and we want to pursue it regardless, immediately begin to get the counts. The counts are good for 5 years once they have the stamp on them. And so I would just differentiate again that the Article 14 for public signs and equipment, a lot of that is getting us data that we're going to use as a community to inform ourselves on good decision making. But what we need through Article 15 is that engineer stamp that we can use to provide to Mass DOT certified engineer traffic studies.
Back to the timing, Travis, if you're able to get somebody on contract and we do engage in the services quickly for that stamped traffic count, we would then take that documentation as part of our application to MassDOT for those exclusions, is that correct?
Yes.
And when we met with MassDOT in the field, they gave us a sense that we would measure their turnaround of our needs, I think they said within a couple of months.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to nail down a time frame, but setting the expectation of when residents could expect to see some kind of a relief would be months from now, but sounds more like the spring, maybe late winter by the time we start to hear and see things. But this particular article is critical to that path. We need this damn study in order to move forward.
That's correct.
Comments on that? Good? Good. All right, Article 16, road acceptances. This needs to go through at this town meeting, correct?
Yes, I confirmed with Jay Tallerman, so essentially, there are three options that we gave ourselves when we passed this in July. The one that we're probably gonna end up going down the road of is taking. The taking, regardless of how you write the warrant article, does sunset after 120 days. And so Jay's point is, if, especially on Indian Ridge Road South, which we heard from a resident previously, and has been an issue for this town since 2011, dating back that far. We've sort of been through multiple iterations of this. We want to make sure we get it done. We don't want to lose the opportunity here to make sure to reset the clock on 120 days if we do need to take it. It's finding the ownership has become problematic there, and also Hoppingbrook because of the LLCs that turn over and then sort of going through that process. So to take it may be our best option, and to do that, we want to reset the clock on the 120 days.
Got it. Okay, great. Any thoughts on the warrant as it stands, Josh? Beth? Nope, looks good. Are you good?
Just real quick, so 15 and 16 are the only two, 5, 15, and 16 are the only two that the Finance Committee did not discuss and make a recommendation on last Tuesday night?
I don't think they'll have any road, they should have nothing to do with the road acceptance, right?
I would think, yes.
They didn't take up the road acceptance.
Right.
I did tell them that I'd be bringing back information on Article 15, which is what I shared in the packet. It's on priority. They did not take up the capital budget, again, because the school committee had not voted yet. And then I will be bringing back then, actually Article 7, because I let them know that I would like to bring the $65,000 change to you.
Okay,
So they didn't take action on that.
5, 7, and 15.
And then, so the business that I would do before you sort of, or you can do it however you'd like, Chair, but my point would be we open the warrant to remove 17, 18, 19, 20, because they were in there when we closed the warrant.
I'll entertain a motion to open the warrant this time to make some administrative changes.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the warrant is now open, Travis.
Okay, so my recommendation would be a motion to remove Articles 17, 18, 19, and 20. So moved.
I will second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'll entertain a motion to close the warrant
I
at this
will
point.
make that motion.
I will second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The warrant is now closed.
Fastest thing we've done tonight.
There you go.
So there's a couple tweaks in this document, but otherwise I believe based on all of the reading that if you're comfortable with it, you could approve it as written with the tweaks that we've gone through tonight, which I'll obviously been tracking.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the fall town meeting warrant as prepared by the town administrator with subtle adjustments.
I will make that motion. I just have one quick question. I should have asked before, apologies. So this job compensation plan, in Article 2, that's been vetted. Everybody knows that those numbers look good.
Yes, that came from Mary Bosquet. Thank you,
Okay.
Mary.
Excellent.
And has been reviewed by the town accountant and myself.
Excellent, okay. Then I make that motion.
Do you have a second?
Yep, second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nice job on that, Travis.
Thank you, Travis.
Thank you for all your help.
Let us move on to board business. We have an appointment for the on-call fire department. Mr. Sprout.
Oh, you want me to read it now?
I'll give you a second to move in that direction. I actually have a hint that we're about to appoint another Cassidy.
Yeah, I think I saw that. Nope, okay. No, just curious.
Well, the last one worked out okay so
Yeah,
far.
he's doing well. All right, so I will make a motion to appoint James Cassidy as an on-call firefighter for the Holliston Fire Department.
Do I have a second on that motion?
Yeah, I will second that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 So carried. Electric rate options, Mr. Hearn.
Yes, I believe James Keith should be on the call with us, and I did provide in your packet an analysis based on his presentation to you earlier and some final information through Matt Zedek that James and Matt went back and forth on, and James is looking for a decision to save the town some money. James?
Yeah, so I don't know if you want to pull up the spreadsheet, because I did get some updated information from Patriot Energy this afternoon. It makes some changes in the calculation, but it's if you want to go through that.
Sure, they each have the one that you sent to me last week.
Okay, so I'll just talk through the changes here. Let me pull up my version. So what I did, if you look at your spreadsheet, is I compiled all the information from a supplier I've been working with and various brokers that Matt Zedek has been working with. And you can see in your list, Eversource, which is a variable rate, Patriot Energy. Patriot Energy has a minimum renewable amount of electricity, as well as 100% renewable. And then Constellation, the same, a minimum, which is 18%, by the way. The minimum, the state mandate is 18% renewable energy, and that's something with, wind or solar that makes up that component of the electricity. And again, this is the supplier rate. There's nothing to do with the delivery charges. Also got a rate with Direct Energy, First Power, and NextEra, which is part of our aggregation program. And I tried to pull everything together here because it's kind of confusing. The baseline for everything is the Eversource rate, which is variable. So if you look at the bottom of the sheet, what we've done is we took a 3-year average of the Eversource rate, which came out to roughly 0.11572, so 11.5 cents a kilowatt hour. And I just threw some numbers in there. So in May, you could see it was about 12 cents. In June, it was 11.9 cents. And then in July, it went to 9 cents. But it varies. It varies throughout the year. But if you take the average over 3 years, it comes out to basically 11.5 cents. But if we decide to enter into a contract, and I broke it out into a 12-month term, a 24-month term, and a 36-month term, and we can choose which one we want, you can see the savings, which is in column F, that we would save on our supplier charges by going with, in this case, Patriot Energy, which is in row 6. Would be $80,000 a year. If we went with Patriot Energy, but with 100% renewable, it'd be about $74,000 a year. And then you can see with Constellation, 48, and I'm not going to read them all, but you can see all the numbers there. So, no matter who we choose, there's significant savings to be had. One of the things with, okay, I see it's up on the screen now.
Yeah, sorry.
Keep in mind, yeah, I'm not looking, I'm looking at my screen. I pulled the file up myself. Keep in mind that some of these suppliers want to lock in longer terms, and then to do that, they've reduced their rates. The only exception is Patriot Energy, which actually their rates actually go up the longer you lock in. Not quite sure how they calculate that, but that's what they've done. If you can see in column G, if we go to 24 months, if we went with a longer contract with Patriot Energy, you can see it would actually be saving less money. So it'd be basically $7,547. If we, went with Constellation Energy, we'd actually save a little bit more money, but overall, if you can see, it'd be $50,000 savings. But, we would, based off of the 12-month term, we would save an additional $1,500. And then if you go down, you can see with the 36-month term, you can see the savings as well. My recommendation here is to go with a 12-month term. I would be hesitant in locking to something for 24 months or even for 36 months. But again, that's the choice of the board. Another decision that needs to get made is, do we want to go with the minimum renewable amount of energy that we purchase, or the 100% renewable? If we went with Patriot, you know, you're talking about $6,000, you know, difference annually. So that's the choice. I'll entertain any questions that you may have. Like I said, the numbers that you see on the screen here might be a little different. I did get some updated numbers from Patriot Energy today, and they're actually a little bit more favorable than what's showing on the sheet now.
Thank you, James. Beth, question?
So with respect to the renewable energy particularly, is there any trends on the price of the service? I mean, it feels like, from what I've heard out in the world, that renewable energy is becoming cheaper. And I'm just curious if renewable energy, if that is the trend that you're seeing when you did this research.
It is definitely has come down over the past few years. But you can see it's still more expensive than the minimum renewable. But the differential between what I'll say the conventional, you know, energy, which would be coal or natural gas, and versus the renewable, has definitely, the gap has closed over the years. But the renewable energy is still a little bit more money in terms of you know, the cost of the actual electricity.
Okay.
But it's gotten better. That would be another reason for possibly not, you know, going into a longer term contract.
I'm good.
James, how long have we had the variable rate with Eversource?
It depends. We have, you know, 70 different accounts in town, and some have, you know, their own electric supplier of choice, but primarily the bills that I've seen for a majority of the buildings have all been with Eversource.
So is it fair to say that this is sort of our first time in recent history where we're taking a deep dive like this and we're looking at a 12-month contract that locks us in this way, or is that not fair to say?
Unfortunately, I don't have the history to know if this has been done in the past. I know
okay.
that,
Travis is saying first time in a while.
okay, yeah.
All right, so
it's safe to say his predecessor didn't do it.
well, I guess what I'm getting at is if we're going to do this on an annual basis and we're going to have this type of detail, which I think is fantastic, I would be more comfortable to go with a 12-month term, because 12 months from now we can take a look at this and we can say, well, did supplier costs go up? Should we have locked in for longer? And if the answer is no, then the 12-month makes sense to continue. If we 12 months from now look back and say, well, they bumped up a little bit, that might at the time, 12 months from now, make us more inclined to enter into a longer term agreement. So 12 months looks okay to me. I really would advocate strongly for the 100% renewable option. There are quite a few indicators that, you know, in the near future, and certainly the distant future, we are going to be looking to be a net zero community. We are going to be looking to actively, in all ways, reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And so to not make a choice today for 100% renewable does not feel like the right choice for me. So I think this information is fantastic, and my preference would be 12 months, Patriot Energy, 100% renewable.
I'll lean in the same direction. Quick question for you, James, regarding electricity rates, and it's a little bit of what Ben was going towards. Did you look at the futures on electricity and where the markets are trending overall?
did I look at the futures? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Right, electricity generation and where they're heading.
Well, generally, rates have come down. I mean, if you look at the general history, people are conserving more. A lot of big energy drawers are switching to more energy efficient, equipment. All our buildings are switching to LEDs, which makes a big difference. So there is a trend that the demand, albeit industry does keep on growing, but the demand is decreasing or not increasing at a rate that it has in the past, which then would drive the price down. In terms of the futures, I don't have specific information on that. But, I would say that, through regulation and whatnot, you're not going to see any drastic swings in the electric rates unless there's something, bigger at play.
I would just say to that too, not to the futures question, but in terms of sort of where this has trended, we've engaged multiple, right? So we got some good information back that we could save money by locking in, and then did due diligence by looking at multiple people who do that. Once you get into that competition, they start going out to various suppliers, and there begins to be a bit of butting heads at that point when you ask too many people to get you numbers. But I think at this point we've sort of gotten all the data that we can to determine that this is the right time to do this.
This is incredible work, James. It really shows the value of your position within the town of Holliston, and I think Matt Zeta contributed to this as well.
Oh, absolutely.
You're presenting a pretty substantial savings that the town can suddenly realize. At this point, I'd like to entertain a motion from any of my colleagues if they'd like to recommend one of the models that James has presented to us tonight.
I'll make a motion for using the 12-month Patriot Energy 100% renewable, and we can reevaluate in a year to sort of see if it makes sense to continue it on an annual basis. The only caveat I would like to add for making that motion too is, you did touch on it, James, but I want to see if there are ways we can look towards conservation, starting to eliminate some of the usage and different kinds of actions to try to reduce the demand that we have.
Absolutely. And Matt's got a number of things that he's working on. Streetlights is a big one, but that's a whole complicated mess. Thanks to the efforts of Chris Mayo over the years, the green communities, a lot of the lighting conversion in town. In fact, this week we're about to convert all the lights at Pinecrest in the clubhouse as well as the parking lots to LED. So there'll be significant savings there as well. So the town is heading in the right direction in terms of conservation, but there's always things that we can do to improve.
So I second that, but I'm just going to add a quick comment here. Remember, Ben, you'll be here, and so will John, right? 12 months from now, that we will be looking not at the supply charges, but at the rate per kilowatt hours, because to James's point, if we're driving down our usage, that supply charges will be less next year.
Indeed.
So it'll have to be the rate that we're watching.
Yes. Thank you, James, for doing
All right,
that.
we have a motion and a second for the 12-month Patriot Energy 100% renewable, which is projected to have a cost savings of $64,926. Is that correct, James?
Actually, if I could share my screen, I do have an updated file. I don't know if that's possible. Says it.
Lower, but the choice.
There it goes.
The choice
I got it.
same.
I got it. Let me share here. So this is the updated file. Actually have one more supplier on here, First Power. But you can see that the savings that we're going to get with the 100% renewable with Patriot is $74,445.
Fantastic.
If we wait another minute, do we get another slide that looks even better?
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. That carries. James, outstanding work.
James, thank you.
Travis,
All right,
good
thank you.
Thanks to Matt Zedek also for his work on this. This is gold.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Matt and I worked on this together. He was got a lot of the prices, so credit to him.
Great work.
See you next on natural gas, right?
Yeah, actually, yes, we are going to natural gas next. So
Great.
It's to be continued.
Nice job. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Next, the Board of BOS. So let's go with Select Board Q1 update. Drafted by Ben. I've read that. It looks great. Thank you, Ben. Any comments on that, Tina?
Nope, looks great, Ben, thank you.
All right, also be a product that'll get released to those willing to read what we've been up to since July 1, correct?
Would you like me to send that to the publishers? Would you like to, Holliston Reporter?
It can come from you. I think that works.
I'll take a motion to accept the product, the Q1 update by Mr. Sparrow.
I'll make that motion.
I'll make a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It carries. Thank you.
Awesome. And I'll work towards doing the same thing, and hopefully it'll be a little tighter timeline, but we'll have the same one for Q2.
Great. The Lions Club Holiday Light Display.
I think we have that on the phone.
Big part?
We have that on the phone, so.
That was a request from Ed Daniels. The paperwork is in your packet.
So the holiday season decorations, along downtown Holliston, using red and white lights and snowflake pole lights. Will be installed November 21st, 28th will be the lighting, and it'll be taken down January 9th or the 10th. This application is by Ed Daniels. Ed should stand by. I don't know if we'll have any questions, but if we do, we'll put them our way. Ben, any questions?
Nope, seems pretty straightforward to me.
It's an annual Holliston Lions Club sponsored item, which is really nice of them. Great club. Tina, any thoughts?
No, just looking forward to the holiday cheer.
I know.
Yeah, right, we need it.
Let's take a motion to approve the request by the Holliston Lions Club to put up and take down the exterior holiday display for Town Hall.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That made it easy, right, Ed?
Thank you, Ed.
Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is Select Board meeting minutes for November 2nd, 2020. Ben?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the select board on November 2nd, 2020.
Second, Tina?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Finally, other business, anything, Ben? Not this time. Tina?
Yes, I do. So, I held talk with Chief Stone last week, and just wanted to present something for discussion. I think you're looking for some I know we're looking for some direction from the board, perhaps the Traffic Advisory Committee. So, if you don't mind, I'll just take about 30 seconds here. At least 4 times in the past 10 years, Holliston has received strong recommendations to lower speed in the downtown area. The first was in 2012 with the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Road Safety Audit. In 2014, both the Metropolitan Area Planning Council and the Holliston Downtown Vision Committee made the same recommendation. In 2017, the Downtown Streetscape report done by a third-party consulting firm also recommended lowering speeds through downtown Holliston. Since the first recommendation in 2012, there have been several serious and fatal car crashes in downtown Holliston. The 3 new traffic signals made a tremendous improvement to the safety of all road users, but there's still work to be done. We heard from Holliston Together last week. Speed and safety remain concerns of downtown business owners. In 2019, town meeting gave authority to the select board to use new state law to lower speeds throughout town. Chapter 90, Section 18B allows the select board to create a safety zone in downtown and lower speeds to 20 miles an hour. There are both pros and cons to taking this approach. We could also pursue a speed study with Mass DOT and apply for a lower posted speed limit that way. There are pros and cons to this approach. The select board can either make the decision on our own or send the issue to the Traffic Advisory Committee for a recommendation. The Traffic Advisory Committee meets on December 9th, and I think the select board could anticipate a recommendation following that meeting. So that was what I wanted to hear your thoughts on, and I don't believe it would take a vote, although if it did, we could put it on the agenda for next week, or we could just provide direction to the Traffic Advisory Committee, the chair, Chief Stone, to add it to our agenda.
Any thoughts?
No, I mean, no, that's nothing else.
Good.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll take your guidance on whether or not it needs a vote. It's excellent info. At this point, let's just keep the train rolling here.
Okay.
Bring it back if we need a vote, and otherwise we'll just...
Okay, so I'll ask Chief Stone to put it on the Traffic Advisory Committee's agenda for December 9th. Okay, thank you.
All right, I have none. That is it for this evening. I want to wish Chief Cassidy another happy birthday. Big day for him. And I hope he has a great time. Let's take a motion to adjourn. Do we have, Carol, you have a hand up there. What can we do for you?
Just curious, I know I've been listening to a lot of different things. So number one, on the traffic study that you guys are proposing on December, whenever the December meeting is that just for the South Street and Woodland Street, or is it for all streets, or what are we approving that traffic study for?
So the scope includes several area streets. You've named a couple, Carol, but it would be an area that would include Bullard, Fisk, Central, Washington, Hollis, Central, Lowland, High Street, Locust, and the open area industrial. So several streets in the surrounding areas that we've already discussed.
Okay, so all of those are up for that study. Okay.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Secondly, with the electricity, I know we're looking at it for cost savings and whatnot, but has anyone looked at the size and scope of these companies that we're dealing with? In other words, Patriot Energy, how many employees do they have? What's their response time if something goes wrong versus Constellation? Is it better to pay an extra 5 cents per kilowatt hour for a large company, Constellation, which is huge, versus Patriot, which I think has 200 employees? Has anyone dug into these firms to say, yes, there's a cost savings, but it's not always wisest to go with the cheapest bid, if you get what I mean? I mean, you
No, that's a great
know
question.
what you're dealing with.
Okay, let's have our town administrator try to address that question. Stand by.
Sure, and James, feel free to hop back on if you'd like. So, I think at this point, what we're talking about, is putting together, and locking into a rate. So it is sort of the capacity that we're talking about. It's not necessarily the company that's coming out and servicing lights. Supply side, right? So, it's a change in methodology rather than having variable rates, for each different account that we're managing. It's sort of looping them together, grouping them together in a way that is just getting us economies of scale. I don't think, I'm thinking of it in terms of regardless, sorry.
And delivery is separate too, right? No, isn't there a separate delivery charge as well? So that would that delivery charge would help cover repairs and
This is not necessarily a company that's coming out when we have an issue with power going out. That's not what's happening. That's not what this is. This is the supply as we discussed.
Okay.
Carol, that's the distinction. This company supplying us a product and not climbing poles.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
this is James Keys. Just for clarification, yeah, the Eversource is still going to remain our distributor. So they're the ones who are going to do all the work and ensure that the electricity gets to us. It's just who we're purchasing the actual electricity from that's changing.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure. All right, we were near a motion to adjourn, and we were just getting ready to wish Mike Cassidy a happy birthday again. So
Is it his birthday?
I've heard it's his birthday. We will entertain a motion to adjourn this time.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye. Aye, that carries. Holliston, have a great night. We will catch you next week.